All right. Hello, everyone. This is Robert from Game Room Live, and welcome to a new series of videos we're going to be having here on the channel. Although I might spin this off into its own channel. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But this is called the Game Room's Otaku Corner, where we'll be talking mostly about anime stuff, but there will be other general nerdy topics as well, and it'll basically be a series of vlogs and maybe some live streams as well. What do I mean by general nerdy stuff? Well, just nerd and pop culture stuff. For example, I'm probably going to do some kind of stream or something here pretty soon where I rewatch the Ninja Turtles movies. I haven't watched those in ages. Used to be kind of into the Turtles when I was a little kid. Want to see if it still tickles my fancy now. But anyway, enough about that. For the first inaugural vlog in this series, I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on the last episode of Macross 7. That might be a weird place to start, the last episode, but it's because I've been doing this, excuse me, this Macross Mega Marathon photo retrospective thingamajigger on my Facebook page, and I finally got to the last episode of Macross 7, and I just had a whole lot of thoughts that were just swirling around in my head, and I realized, it would take me ages to write them all down and make it coherent, so I'm instead going to talk about it and make it incoherent. Also, you'll have to forgive my rather scruffy appearance. I've been up at my parents' place here, helping them do some renovations over the last week or so. So anyway, last episode of Macross 7. I'm watching this episode, and I need to get my elbows up off the table because it's going to jiggle the camera every single time I touch the table. So yeah, last episode of Macross 7. I'm watching this episode, and something about it just isn't clicking with me. It's not gelling. And I probably put a little bit too much thought into this. But I think I finally figured out what it was that wasn't clicking with me. And I realized it was actually not just something, but some things. Really, what I realized is that my issues with the last episode of Macross 7 were actually issues with the whole of Macross 7. That the last episode was kind of a microcosm of all these nitpicks I had about not just the last episode, but the series itself. So what exactly do I mean by that? Well, first of all, and see, there I go, putting my elbow on the table again. It's because there's just this cheap plastic table my parents had that I'm borrowing. So what exactly do I mean? Well, to start with, I really think that Operation Stargazer should have been the lead-in to the final episode. I think what should have happened is you have the final episode here, and you have Operation Stargazer here, and then maybe one other episode in the middle, maybe. And that's kind of how it should have go. And it sort of I do this sometimes. I get in front of a camera. I talk well enough to myself, but when I get in front of a camera, I suddenly start messing up and slurring my thoughts and my words. I'll try not to do that, but it flows into the issue I have with Macross 7 being too long. I honestly do think it's too long. It's not that they wrote a bad story, and now my screensaver is going to be kicking in every single time. It's not that they wrote a bad story. It's just that um, I really think they could have taken less episodes to tell it, because there are some episodes in Macross 7 that they could lose and it really would not affect the story at all, like the episode with Melane's fan Billy. You could take any important plot elements that were in that episode and shuffle them off to other more important episodes and drop that episode completely. I really think you could. So that was one thing, and that's one of the more minor of the issues that I had. The second, third, and fourth things have to do with the so-called three pillars of Macross: music, Valkyries, and the love triangles. So let's start with the Valkyries. You don't see the Valkyries do it. If you compare this last episode of Macross 7 to the last episode of the original SDF series, or Macross Frontier, or probably even the last episode of Macross Delta, well, pretty much to any last episode, even the last episode of the 7 OVA, Dynamite 7, the Valkyries just don't get to do a lot of cool stuff. I mean, yeah, you get to see Max and Milia zooming around in their VF-22 Sturmvogels, and up to that point you didn't know that Milia had a Sturmvogel. But other than that, they really don't do much, and that actually is kind of why I like the first half of the show better than the second half, because once you hit the second half of the show and the song energy stuff starts up, a lot of the time you'll have the Valkyries, especially the Fire Valkyrie, Basara's Fire Valkyrie, just kind of floating around shooting song energy beams at the Proto-Devlin. And you know what? That's not interesting. That's not dynamic. And it's also another part of the problem with Macross 7 where it abuses stock footage. The first time you see the Fire Valkyrie transform, it's really interesting and really dynamic, and it captures your attention. But by the time you get to episode 49, it's boring, because you've seen that stock footage transformation like 50 times, almost once per episode. They just... nobody... And actually, that brings up another issue. Where the heck is the Verada fleet? It just sort of vanishes after the Operation Stargazer thing, and you never really see the Verada fleet again, except a small wing of the Verada variable fighters, like the not the Elgerzarines. What are the purple eggplant headed ones called? Are they the Panzerzarines? I can't remember. Yeah, no. Anyway, point being, why isn't the entire Macross 7... And that's another thing. I swear I'm not going to be doing this the entire video. But that's another thing. Why does the entire Macross 7 fleet all of a sudden fold to Verada 4? Why? The whole point of Max taking Battle 7 alone to Verada 4 was so that the fleet, he could stop the Proto-Devlin and the fleet would be safe. And there's a scene where Milia gets out of bed. She'd had her spiritia sucked out, and she's recovering, and she gets out of bed, and she's quite she's in a bit of an uproar about this, which says to me that this was not her idea, that someone folded the fleet, including the civilian ships, to Verada 4 without her say-so. So yeah, what the heck was up with that? Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I do understand that Macross 7, or Macross as a whole, is not a mecha anime in the same vein as like your Mobile Suit Gundam franchise, or Armored Trooper Votomes, or heck, even Round Vernier Vifum, if you really want to stretch. it has a unique way of doing things and solving the conflicts between the protagonists and the antagonists. But at the same time, you still can't have the Valkyries flying around, blowing crap up and doing cool stuff. There's nothing that says that you can't, and yeah, I know it's probably because of budget limitations, and they weren't able to make 7 quite as fancy a show as some of the fancier episodes of SDF Macross, but, even so, it's not interesting to me or dynamic or anything just to have most of the Valkyries a lot of the time just floating around or shooting song energy beams off at the Proto-Devlin. And you know what? I'm just going to go into that. That was the fourth thing, or the fifth, I can't remember, that I had a problem with in this episode is the villains. The last episode is either where the villains get their comeuppance or the antagonists and protagonists are somehow able to meet some kind of middle ground and solve their problems, which is what happens here in Macross 7. The problem is, I don't give a crap about the villains. I am being completely serious when I say that the Proto-Devlin are the absolute worst villains, or antagonists, if you prefer that term, that the Macross franchise has ever had. Yes, they are worse even than the somewhat strangely explained, if not poorly explained, Macross Galaxy Conspiracy and Frontier. Because they are either not particularly interesting characters or annoying characters. There's no one on the villain's side that you really want to see the heroes overcome, or that presents any kind of threat to the heroes, except, well, there is a threat here in the last episode, because Gepelnich, for some incredibly odd reason, has decided to go for his nuclear option, and starts using his actual Proto-Devlin monster body, which is actually, the evil series bioweapons made by the proto-culture, who, for some incredibly odd reason, decided they needed a weapon capable of destroying all life in the galaxy at once. Why? No, seriously, why? Even the Death Star can have a tactical application, as in Return of the Jedi. But you have the Gepelnich weapon, which just wipes out all life in the galaxy. What were the proto-culture planning on doing? Were they going to pull a Halo and go hang out on a space station outside of the galaxy while the Gepelnich weapon wiped out all life? And of course, later on, we learn in the video game Macross 30 Voices Across the Galaxy that they also created a evil series weapon that could screw with the space-time continuum. So they were just on a real roll, weren't they? But it just seems to me that even though there is a threat, it still doesn't really make most of the villains interesting, especially Gepelnich, who's spent about 2/3 of Macross 7 being the most boring block of wood I could imagine. I mean, I swear, the guy is almost as stiff at times, almost stiffer than George freaking McFly. Then you've got the characters who are just plain annoying, like Gavil with his beauty of this and beauty of that, and beauty of falling for the same stock footage of Gamlen's 12 times. Or you've got characters that have no character whatsoever, like Glavil the monster, or Civil. Yeah, no, I'm never going to be convinced that she doesn't have a character. She has a purpose, yes. She has a role, yes. A character, no. At least nothing of any actual substance. So, I really don't give two damns what happens to the Proto-Devlin at the end of all this. I kind of wish they would just blow them all up and have done with it. Because the Proto-Devlin are, quite frankly, a waste of my time, except for Gigil. Gigil was the only Proto-Devlin character worth a damn, but he already died like 7 or 8 episodes ago. Thereabouts. So, yeah. Now we move on to my last 2 points, so hopefully this won't be too long. Love triangles and the music. Let's save the music for last. Let's do the love triangles, because there are actually 2 love triangles in this show. Only, they're not actually love triangles. Why aren't they triangles? Well, it's best illustrated in the one episode where they're testing out the song energy devices, the ones the Firebomber members wear for the first time. Melane's testing it out on stage, and her song energy branches off to Gamlen, but then it also branches off to Basara, and it creates this V. Do the flying V! There's a 90s reference for you. But yeah, it creates this V, and that's the perfect illustration, because it is a V. It's not a triangle. There is no third side, because the party of the third part, Basara, has nothing to do with romance. This is a very interesting thing about his character. Well, I don't know if interesting is the right word, but honestly, yeah, no, strange actually is the better word. That Basara has nothing to do with romance in this series. You know, as early as episode 3, when Rex comes up to him and plants a big ol' one right on his kisser, and he has 0 reaction. Absolutely 0 reaction. Well, he does seem a bit surprised, but he doesn't kiss her back. He doesn't try to get her number. He doesn't throw in some witty retort or a quip or anything. He's just kind of surprised and like, oh, okay. Fire! And it's just like, I don't even know why they're bothering, because, at least to me, Melaine and Gamlen clearly had much more chemistry than her and Basara did. So, I don't even know why they were trying to set it up at all, because something that really annoyed me in this episode is, I can't remember exactly what Gamlen says, but he says something to Melaine, to which she responds, I really like you, Gamlen. Beat. But I really, really like Basara, too. Why? Look, I know Melaine has just barely turned 15, and teenagers can be kind of stupid. I was kind of stupid at 15, too. But she doesn't seem like an unintelligent young woman. You can't be an unintelligent person and, do the things Melaine does. She's able to fly a Valkyrie with a guitar a bass, for crying out loud. So why are they even trying to pretend there is a triangle? There is no triangle. Why is she saying this? It actually, that line of Melaine's actually annoys me more now than the "You're both my wings" line from Frontier. Because I've actually come to the realization that there was actually no cop-out in Frontier. Alto did choose Cheryl. He chose her twice, in fact. But that's a story for another time. So there's that. And honestly, I really don't know why they couldn't just have completed the relationship between Gamlen and Melaine. Granted, it would be kind of weird a 15-year-old getting married to... Gamlen's actually... No, he's 21, isn't he? I'll have to check that later. But yeah, I said there were 2 love triangles. The other love triangle, which is not actually a triangle, is the one between Gigil, Basara, and Civil. again, not actually a triangle because Basara is not into Civil that way. He doesn't want her romantically. He doesn't want to move her romantically. He just wants to move her, just like he wants to move the mountain and move the galaxy. And, now that I think about it, that triangle actually works even less than the one between Mylene, Gamlen, and Basara, because we never find out why exactly Giggle is so gaga for Civil. No, seriously, why is he? Why is he so devoted to her? Why is he willing to risk everything, including his life, for her? Never explained. Because, the Proto-Devlin are actually energy beings from another freaking dimension. What do they know of or care about concepts of romance other than the fact that's something we understand? Yeah, I know, I'm getting really nitpicky at this point, but I honestly do feel like it's a weakness because you have this third piece to the two love triangles that isn't actually involved, at least romantically, and I really don't know why they do that. Or why anything in the Civil Giggle Basara triangle happens at all, because, Civil tries so desperately just to have some kind of physical contact with Basara, a kiss or anything. On at least one occasion, it really seems like she wants to bone him and bone him hard. And I already said, Giggle's so totally devoted to Civil, but we have no idea why, other than she's hot. But Basara doesn't care anything about those sorts of things. So, yeah, pretty much a failure on the romance front. And lastly, the music. The music is definitely the biggest part of not just this last episode, but Macross 7 as a whole. And I do like the music, I really do. I really do like Firebomber. But part of the problem, and the music is done well. Like, I really like the scene where everyone is trying to sing Light the Light to stop Gepelnich from sucking out their spiritia. There's actually a scene in the episode which, oddly enough, reminded me of the scene from Ghostbusters 2 where everyone is singing out. Yeah, everyone's singing, how do you pronounce this? Auld Lang Syne, because it's midnight at New Year's, and that weakens the slime shell over the Manhattan Museum. There's a scene where everyone's singing outside the hospital where Basara is at, and I kind of have a feeling that everyone on City 7 is actually singing too. And then the very end of the episode where they start singing Try Again? Yeah, Try Again. And Civil has that epiphany, and she starts singing Try Again with Basara, and then Gepelnich has the epiphany too, and he starts singing. And another thing that's not explained, for some reason, Gepelnich's epiphany destroys his monster body somehow. I don't know, but it just does. And all of that's really good, but the only problem I have with it is, again, connected to the larger issues of Macross 7 as a whole, is that I'm kind of sick of Firebomber at this point, and I really shouldn't be. And that's actually, I take that back partially. It's not really an issue so much with Macross 7, except for the fact that, Firebomber is the only BGM in the whole show, except for a few random Macross Plus and Macross 2 songs. It's the way I chose to watch this series, and this is advice I'd give out to anyone who wants to give Macross 7 a try. Don't binge watch this series. Really, don't. You'll probably end up not liking it if you do. If I ever do another one of these mega marathons again, which probably won't be until the 40th anniversary 5 years from now. I'm going to spread the Macross 7 stuff out amongst everything else because I feel that's probably a better way to do it. But yeah, I'm kind of bored of Firebomber at this point because it's been nothing but Firebomber for 49 episodes, and it's not that it's bad, it's that it's dulled my enthusiasm for it. You know, there's only so many times you can listen to your favorite song before you get bored of it. Which reminds me, I really need to make sure I've loaded Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News back onto my iPod. That's my favorite song. Well, one of them. My favorite Firebomber song, incidentally, is Diamond Calling, which wasn't even in the show. I think it was only previewed in one of the Macross 7 Plus shorts. So there's that. So yeah, those are basically all of the issues I had with Macross 7, the last episode of Macross 7, and, as I said, they end up being, expressions of problems I have with the series as a whole. It's just a very mixed bag for me, because it has stuff that I like. Firebomber, Operation Stargazer was great. I like all the Valkyrie designs, yes, even the ones with faces. But it also has a lot of stuff I don't like. It's too long. The villains either bore me or annoy the crap out of me. And so on and so forth. Now, all that being said, I would still recommend that Macross fans try to watch it at least once. Like I said, don't binge watch it, spread it out, but watch it at least once, because at its core, it's still a Macross show. It still is taking that unique approach that Macross takes and runs with it, probably more so than some other entries in the franchise. It's definitely not for everyone, and it is definitely for a lot of people. I understand I am in the minority when it comes to not thinking Macross 7 is really all that great. And you know what? I'm perfectly fine with that. I really am. Another thing I'm in the minority for concerns the Mandalorians and Star Wars. Never understood why them and Boba Fett are so popular with so many Star Wars fans. I guess I'm just weird that way. But yeah. One thing I forgot to do when I posted my pictures, I'm going to include the link to my retrospective. It's set to public so anyone can view it. I forgot to say what was my favorite song, my favorite Valkyrie, my favorite character, my favorite death, as weird as that sounds, and what else, and probably my most favorite scene. So yeah, favorite character first. I could go with Gubaba just because he's so darn cute. I've been talking a lot, need to wet my whistle. And I was kind of leaning towards Gamblin, but I think ultimately I'm going to have to go with, I am going to go with Gamblin. He's he's a bit of an odd character because he's a real stiff at the start of the show. Seriously, the guy's got like a titanium rod stuck right up his bunghole. But it's interesting how he changes throughout the course of the show. A lot of people, one thing other people criticize Macross 7 for that I didn't mention is how Basara is the kind of protagonist that changes. He doesn't really change much himself, but he does change the other people around him. And that's especially evident with Gamlen, because at the end of the series, he's gone from being this guy with a titanium rod up his butt to being this kind of hot-blooded anime hero in a way, and even believes in the power of Basara's song. So, yeah. Favorite character, Gamlen. Honorable mention going to Milia for how she gently instructs others in the art of piloting a Valkyrie. Gently. Favorite Valkyrie. You know what? There are a lot of cool designs in this show, and that was actually something I was going to mention earlier. Forgive me for sidetracking one last time. But I find an interesting thing about the VF-19s in this show. There are 3 types of VF-19 Excaliburs shown in Macross 7. There's Basara's Fire Valkyrie VF-19 Kai. There's the VF-19F and the VF-19Fs. And the 2 Fs and the S are flown by Emerald Force. And I find it kind of interesting because, and I hope I get this right, but it's said that Kawamori didn't have as much involvement with Macross 7 because he was busy working on Plus, because Plus was happening, the 4 episodes of Plus and then the movie were happening roughly at the same time as Macross 7. And it's interesting because the VF-19 was supposedly going to become the new, after winning the Supernova competition in Macross Plus, it was supposedly going to become the main UN Spacey fighter, which we see in Macross Frontier is not the case. The main fighter has turned out to be the VF-171 Nightmare Plus, which is a modified and even more mass-produced version of Macross 7's VF-17 Nightmare that Gamlen and Diamond Force fly. This was the case because Kawamori apparently said that he thought the VF-19 was too heroic to be a grunt unit. And that just amuses me to no end, because you notice that none of the VF-19s actually survive to the end of the series. You know, Docker's wingmates get blown up. Docker's 19 gets wrecked in this last episode, and you think he's dead, but it turns out he's okay. I kind of have mixed feelings on that, because on the one hand, I never wished a death on the guy, but on the other, he was kind of a jerk and really kind of creepy and a little bit pedo. So I don't know. And of course, the Fire Valkyrie gets wrecked as well. So, you know, just something interesting I thought. But anyway, favorite Valkyrie for Macross 7 is actually going to be the VF-11 Thunderbolt. And no, I'm not kidding about that. I really do like its design. I honestly do. And it constantly irks me that it is just the absolute worst grunt. Probably the worst grunt in all of the Macross franchise. I mean, holy crap, the Macross 7 regular pilots seem to be even worse than freaking TIE Fighter pilots. I bet if a super dimensional rift opened and a squadron of TIE Fighters came flying out and a squadron of Macross 7 fleet VF-11s came zooming in to meet them, I'm pretty sure the TIE Fighter jockeys would come out on top. Golly. And the VF-11, the armored, oh my gosh, the armored VF-11. Whew. I'm getting kind of hot and bothered just thinking about that armored VF-11. Not really. So let's see. Favorite character, favorite Valkyrie, favorite song. Already mentioned Diamond Calling, which actually wasn't even. You know what? I'll go with a song that actually was in the show, and that would probably be Holy Lonely Night. Yeah, Holy Lonely Night. We'll go with that. Favorite death, as weird as that sounds, definitely Lieutenant Docker. He's the one who pilots the armored VF-11, and actually it's split between, not Docker, Lieutenant Kinryu, who flies the VF-11 armored on a suicide mission, and you can't go out in a blaze of glory much better than that, than Basara in the background and singing Tatsugeki Love Hard at the top of your lungs. The split is where two of the Proto-Devlin characters actually do die at the end of the series, and I just love that scene because Gorem and Zomd. I'm being completely serious when I say that if Gorem and Zomd had been in the show from like near the beginning, I would have written off Macross 7 and never watched it again. Completely serious. Thank you. So, yeah. And lastly, overall, most absolute favorite scene. Again, it's a split. And on the one side, we have Operation Stargazer, basically everything that happens in Operation Stargazer. Which, you know what? No, I'm not going to go into that. This video's already gone on long enough. And on the other side of that split is the Speaker Pod Gamma scene. I kind of wish they'd used Speaker Pod Gamma at least one more time, but at least we do get to see it again in Fleet of the Strongest Women. And I'll be commenting about that soon enough. So, yeah. At long last, I have now rambled on for over half an hour and nearly 8 3/4 gigabytes about the last episode of Macross 7 and my feelings on Macross 7 as a whole. Again, I don't think it's bad, and if you're on the fence about it, I would still suggest you watch it. Like I said, don't binge watch it in chunks, and just don't go into it with the mistaken impression that Macross is supposed to be this hard military sci-fi adventure shtick, because it isn't. Never has been and isn't. So yeah, that's more than enough out of me. So please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more of our Otaku Corner videos and all of our other videos. We are not going to stop doing game stuff. That's also going to happen. I've got a whole bunch of Macross games that I'm doing and a bunch of other games. In fact, I'm recording this the evening tomorrow. In the evening tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a live stream, hopefully with the Angry Joe Show Army, playing Overwatch. So look up that as well. And once again, I am Robert from Game Room Live, and I am folding out. I will see you guys later. Bye.